Alright, hey everyone, this is Ash. Welcome back to The King's Speech. So this chapter has had a significant amount of hype around it. I'm guessing you already know from the title, this is my reaction review to One Piece chapter 967, but I figured I'll reiterate it just so we're kind of on the same page there. Unfortunately, this chapter leaked 2 weeks prior to the release date, and a bunch of shitty One Piece fans was posted screen caps of it literally everywhere on Twitter. And despite my best efforts to avoid seeing as much as I could, unfortunately got spoiled in a bit of the major plot reveals. But I figured I'd kind of record a reaction review to this because of all the hype I've seen around it and all of the discussion I've seen about how this kind of impacts and talks about the larger story and everything else. I figure, you know what, might as well kind of give my 2 cents on it and see where it goes. So without further ado, let us dive into One Piece chapter 967, Roger's Adventure. And we have a color page of all the Straw Hats cheering with what I was told was the Japanese band Arashi. So some kind of collaboration color spread. Don't really have much to say about it. It's very adorable, but that's all I really got to say. So you see the Oro Jackson making its way towards Water 7. And the narrator goes, with the help of Ganfor, the god atop the clouds, we descended safely back to the sea below. And you have Buggy and Shanks just having it out with an argument going, the North Pole! No, the South Pole! And proceeded to a city of shipbuilders. Raleigh comes along and bonks him on the head and goes, knock it off, both of you. Do you ever stop squabbling? And they're like, oh, ah! And Roger's reacting in surprise as he goes, what did you say? Those stones are in your countries too? And Odin and Cat Viper and Dogstorm are all just kind of bundling together as like red ones though. And Roger gets mad, he's like, that's the kind I need the most. Why didn't you say something? And he goes, so I've got one road poneglyph sheet that I stole already from Linlin, and I've got a hunch about where another one is. And they're like, way to go, Captain. And Roger's like, I've got it in my grasp. Where is this guiding me? We're gonna gather all 4 of them, yeah! And you see Scrap Heap Island, Water 7. Ta-ha-ha! It's been ages since I saw you guys. And Roger's like, good to see you again, Tom. They're like, hey, Tom. It's like, Tom! And you see Tom the shipwright, the man who built Roger's ship. And you see Buggy and Shanks just running up to give the adorable fish uncle a hug. Or I should say, the original fish uncle a hug. And even Roger's trying to give him a hug, and Tom's just kind of whapping his hands away. And he goes, did you build that train of yours? And Tom's like, you're crazy? I'm still designing it. And Iceberg's off to the side wondering who the hell these guys are. Kokoro's like, all this time you people haven't piped down a bit. And you see Odin going over to baby Frankie and going, what, you're an orphan? Want me to put in a good word with our captain? Frankie gets mad and turns away and goes, a pirate? No way. I just got abandoned by pirates. And Odin's like, you were abandoned? What a laugh. What a complete asshole. And you see more montage of them sailing off to different islands and encountering what looks like a giant mammoth as they start to sing Binks' sake with the yo-ho-ho-ho, yo-ho-ho-ho. They go, time to ship out Binks' brew. And you see them making their way past the bridge on Tequila Wolf, which is less constructed than when Robin was there, but you still see them working away at it. Odin's just staring in shock at that giant bridge. And you see them make their way to Sabaudi as Odin goes, ah yes, Fishman Island, I went there with White Kichi too. And you see them floating down and goes, well, don't be careless, got it? It's no less deadly on the second trip. And you see the iconic scene from Fishman Island, the first time we went around, where they mentioned that Raleigh heard the voice of the Sea Kings. And Roger's like, Raleigh, did you hear that voice? Raleigh's like, hear what? It's dead silent down here. Roger calls out, who's there? Who's talking down in the depths? Odin's like, I hear it too. He's like, you do, Odin? And you see the original trio of Sea Kings is silently swimming by. kind of silently staring and silently in shock as they notice that Roger apparently seems to hear them. And then as they make their way towards the gate, you hear a doom and "Why have you come here, surface dwellers?" It's like, ah, no wait, look closer. It's me, Roger. Don't you recognize me, Neptune the Knight? And we see a young King Neptune with his armor on and his spear in hand. So he goes, Roger? Ah, yes, I see. So you'll be the one to do it. Roger's like, do what? I'm not getting up to anything. What happened to you, Neptune? A man of your stature terrified of a little prophecy? Neptune goes, there's a prophecy that very soon someone will destroy the gates of Fishman Island. And now you're all here. So the natural assumption is, and you hear a zoom. And you hear, King Neptune has been destroyed. And he's like, what? Oh no, it's the doom is the sound effect. He's like, yeah, rah. And he's like, what? And he goes, the Neptunian just bit right through the gate. And it's like, those docile Neptunians? That's impossible. And Odin's like, he was right. It's like, now there's a breach in the outer bubble. Seal it at once. Emergency repairs. And you have Neptune going, ugh. It turned into a disaster after all. And Roger's like, yeah, but it wasn't our fault. And you see an adorable little Madame Charlie with a little hood over her head, just over hands over the crystal ball, going, the Neptunians are restless because they're waiting for the mermaid princess to be born. And you see Prophet Girl Charlie, age 3. And you see, mermaid princess? You've had another prophecy then? It's like, will His Majesty have a child? That's wonderful news. Neptune's like, now wait a moment, I'm not even married yet. I only took the throne a few months ago. And the soldiers go, but King Neptune, she prophesied the death of the late king too. And he's like, she did. And the soldiers go, and she was right about the seductive... Alright, I'll get to that stuff at the end. I mean, the seditious mermaid Odahime and her political protest the other day. These are not good prophecies to be correct about. And you see in the sea forest, Neptune going, her prophecies have been riling up the country lately. And you have Scopper going, that's nice, Neptune, but we didn't come down here to catch up on small talk. And you have Odin going, it seemed like 2 stones would be quite the windfall, but one of these 2 is not very important. And you have Neptune going, you can read it? And he goes, it is an apology from someone named Joy Boy. Then you can really read this writing? Now, what about the weapon that can control Neptunians? Is that here? And Roger goes, the stone on the island in the sky said this is where it would be. So there's 2 poneglyphs on Fishman Island. I don't know if the one on the right is supposed to be a road poneglyph or not, because it's shaded differently. But I guess that's another mystery for what happened to the second poneglyph on Fishman Island. I feel like, you know what, I'll address that at the end once we're done this. And Neptune goes, well, there was a prophecy that little Charlie delivered not long ago that sent a shiver down my spine. It said that a mermaid who can talk to Neptunians will soon be born. They only come around every few centuries, so perhaps... And then Roger's going, you're saying your daughter's going to be a weapon that'll destroy the world one day? Neptune's like, it's just a prophecy. And every power depends on how you use it. Odin's like, who could have guessed that Poseidon would be a mermaid? And you have Roger sitting with baby Charlie and goes, hey Charlie, when is the mermaid princess going to be born? And adorable baby Charlie's like, in 10! Neptune's like, 10 years from now? Why would you take an interest in this, Roger? I'm disappointed in you. And Raleigh goes, it's not the weapon we're after, Neptune. It's the people who called it a weapon. Specifically the vast treasure those people left behind somewhere. And Roger's like, wah, feel better now? Don't worry. We're not coming back in the future to kidnap your hairy daughter. Neptune's like, she will not be hairy. And you see more repetition of Binks' sake as you see them going on pretty much the same journey the Straw Hats do, where they go on the little tube, the tube waves, and they make a stop on Raijin Island. And they make a stop across on another palm-looking island. You have sea wind blows to where who knows, the waves will be our guide, or across the ocean's tide, the sunset is going wild. See the skybirds singing in circles passing by. And you see the Roger Pirates all just having a bath and having a party and fun. And you see in the Sears near Wano, Toki's fallen ill. It's like, Toki! And you have Toki's original destination was the land of Wano. With it so close at hand... Oh my god. With it so close at hand, the exhaustion of her long journey has finally caught up to her. She ought to disembark on Wano. Oh, I wonder why. And you have Dogstorm and Cat Viper going, Kinemon and the others don't know about Lady Toki. We will stay here with her, Lord Odin. And Odin's like, I'm staying too, of course. And Toki gets up and she's like, huh. I was like, no, Odin, you will go. If you are the type of man who stops now, then I'm getting a divorce. Oh my god, this is so bad. Like I said, I'll get to that at the end of the chapter. Then you see the scabbards lined up on the shores of Wano going, It is so very good to see you again at last, Lord Odin. You left Kuri in our hands when you departed, and now, in fact, all of Wano is... And then you have Toki screaming out, Wait! If you truly care for Odin, then I beg of you, let him... And Odin just turns his back on his retainers and goes, I will be leaving again for quite some time. And you can see Kinemon's just getting furious at him. And you see in the back behind Odin's silhouette, you see the factory starting to put off the steam as Orochi looks like it's taken over Shogun and the weapons factories are in full swing. And Odin's narrator note goes, Even as I turned my back on Wano, I knew that some ominous change was afoot. I could sense that if I turned back, I would never again go to sea. And you have Kinemon and Kondro just going, Scoundrel! And he goes, I took a quick copy of the poneglyph and went back to the ship. Oh, boy, alright. And you have Roger being like, oh, scoundrel. And Odin's like, you want to read these messages on your own? And you see him going, it was my first return home in 4 years, and it lasted merely hours. And you see Roger going, seems the only way to reach Zoe was with his Vivre card. And you see Zanesha with a giant doom. He's like, I can see why, it's not even an island. And you have Shanks going, is something the matter, Odin? And he goes, it's nothing, just a strange feeling. And you see the Minx going, I heard it's pirates. I heard it's the Kozuki clan. And you see the Mokomo Dukedom Duke Genghis Khan, who's a giant sheep-looking guy with these curl-up horns, going, it's a letter from Dogstorm and Cat Viper. So those incorrigible problem children are still alive. Oh, we had quite the uproar after they vanished. And you see the Minx coming and doing their customary, welcome visitors, Garchu! It's like, what's going on? It's like, Garchu! And Odin's like, I feel so unnerved here. One of the Roger pirates goes, you alright? It's not like you to be so nervous. And you see Roger's got the same kind of, I don't want to say grimace, uncomfortable look on his face. He goes, I know how you feel, Odin. And they're like, you too, Captain Roger? And he's like, it feels like something huge is watching us. And you see them taken to the road poneglyph we've seen on Zoe, where he goes, there it is, the final road poneglyph. He's like, ooh. He's like, and Odin goes, and the Kozuki crest. Then it's true that we were brothers with the Minx. And you see baby Pedro coming up and going, please, mister, you gotta take me along. And Roger's like, Pedro, you said your name was? Listen, kid, you're on the waiting list. See, everyone gets their turn, their time to shine. And cute little baby Pedro's, my turn? He's like, when it comes around, you can help us. He goes, okay, I will. I'll come to your aid. And Roger goes, we had found several real poneglyphs and the 4 road poneglyphs. And you see in a port town, it's a cough, cough, hack. It's like, you all right, Captain? And you see that Roger's sickness is getting the better of him. As he comes out of his cabin with a wham. And he goes, did we know the place? And then his crew's like, yeah, we figured it out. When do we sail? And he goes, right now. You have whether out of good fortune or bad. Of course, that's what would happen. And you see the apprentice deckhand Buggy Jareau caught a sudden fever and had to forego the voyage to the final island. Red Taro chose to stay behind and care for him. Are they best friends or mortal enemies? You have Buggy with steam just coming off. He's like, I'm better now, I swear. You gotta take me along. And Shank goes, if we're gonna go there, we'll take our own ship someday. You have Roger's pirate crew's finally done it. Roger's completed a full circumnavigation of the globe. He's the first ever. At last, someone has conquered the sea. He's the king of the sea, the king of the pirates. And you see, and on that day, we learned the entire truth of the world. What the 100-year void is, what the people of the deep are, what the ancient weapons are. In the past, Wano was open to the world. In the face of that vast treasure, which was very real indeed, Roger just laughed. And so did we all. We laughed until tears sprang to our eyes. And Roger goes, "Oh, Joy Boy, I wish I'd been born in your time. This is quite a treasure you've left behind. A tale full of laughs. Say, that gives me an idea. We're the first people to reach this final island in 800 years. Why don't we give it a name? We'll call it Laugh Tale." And with a doom, we have next chapter hits January 19th. Alright. I think I can say I was not as enthused or taken in by this chapter as, say, everyone else seemingly was. And the best way I can kind of describe this, I don't know how many people have already seen it, but the best, because I was talking about this recently on my Twitter feed. This is something I was going to address in this chapter, and I didn't realize how kind of relevant to my thoughts it'd be. But the best way I can describe it is this really reminds me of how I felt watching the new Star Wars movie Rise of Skywalker. Because I mentioned on Twitter a few days ago, I want to say, that a lot of this flashback so far has been relying on nostalgia to kind of amp up and anchor kind of the emotional reader investment in Odin's journey and kind of everything else going on. And this chapter was really kind of a perfect showcase of that, where, we see Roger and crew going back to see old familiar sights. We see Tom again, we see Iceberg and Kokoro and Frankie again. We have, him singing Binks' Sake as his crew is making their way towards all these islands. We see Tequila Wolf again. We see Sabouti and Fishman Island and Neptune, and, get all the references to events that have transpired and are still yet to come again. With the whole birth of Shirahoshi becoming Poseidon, with Charlie, predicting events that aren't technically, how do I put it? Like predicting events that aren't technically what she sees. Because as we see in this chapter, she's like, oh, someone's going to destroy the gate. And Neptune's like, oh, it must be Roger. He showed up, that guy's a rascal. He's a rabble-rouser. This is the kind of shit he does. And it turns out, no, the Neptunians were going to destroy the gate. Obviously, that's going to play into Charlie's prophecy of who destroys Fishman Island, or not who destroys it, but the reason, I guess, why Fishman Island is destroyed. Because in her flashback, it's like, oh, a man with a straw hat's going to destroy it. And it seems like, it's this evil, horrible thing that's going to happen. And based on this flashback, I'll probably be like, no. He will destroy Fishman Island, but he'll have had a good reason for it. And we're just missing the slight context that puts the whole picture together. So we kind of get that. We see, all right, we get a little bit of new information with the second poneglyph on Fishman Island. I'm going to have to go back and reread the arc to see if there was ever a reference or mention made to this. Because Fishman Island having had two poneglyphs, and one being a road poneglyph, and somehow Neptune or the others having not mentioned that, hey, we used to have two poneglyphs on this island, but one went missing somewhere, and it's the super important one you're looking for, seems like kind of a big detail to leave out. And it could have been a thing of Oda being like, oh, I couldn't reveal that yet because I have some plot point coming down, but it would be kind of sloppy to do it that way, but that's neither here or there. That's kind of a minor detail. And then you see, them going back to Wano, and you're seeing Orochi doing his whole shtick. You see them going to Zou, seeing the Minx and the Garchu and all that. and you see Pedro, you know, the callback to Pedro saying, as a little kid, "Oh, Roger, Captain Roger, I'm going to help you, yeah." So all of that is really kind of Oda using nostalgia to be like, "Oh, look at how great this is. Yeah, look at Roger. He's going to visit all these places now. Yeah, hurrah." And I wouldn't have a problem with that if it did more to recontextualize or recontextualize and kind of change our perceptions of these places or put them in a new light rather than being like, "Hey, look, it's Tom, look at that nostalgia, yeah, it's really, really good." I feel like that's been the biggest problem in this flashback is Oda hasn't added a lot of depth to it, where he's just kind of buoying it up with, you know, flashbacks and callbacks and things to kind of make it feel meatier than it is. And it really lacks a lot of substance. And that kind of ties into some other problems I have with some of the plot points and handling of it in this arc. Quick aside before I get into like the troublesome aspects I have, because I want to mention something with Charlie I don't think I've mentioned before. I'm pretty sure that Charlie's future seeing powers are linked to her having been born with observation Haki similar to Asia. I don't think we've gotten confirmation of that yet, but that's definitely where my mind was the first time we've seen it, and ever since then that's kind of been in the back of my mind. And to me, this kind of just confirms it, but I'm hoping Oda will eventually confirm that as well. And not, because I was thinking this might also be the case with Toki. That's the reason it kind of pinged in my mind. I was thinking that Toki might have the same power, which is why she sent the scabbards 20 years into the future. Otherwise, that's a really damn good guess on her part, guessing that they'd be needed exactly 20 years is when the time Wano would be liberated. But apart from that, my problem with like the whole bit about like, "Oh, look, Otohime, the sexy mermaid. Oh, isn't she so seditious, that rebel? And wow." It's just so unnecessary to kind of say like, "Oh, you know, Otohime was young and she was also sexy. I need to add in that detail in there so you know that she wasn't, you know, super ugly." Like, details like that are just kind of like a minor irritant to me. But, what was I saying? But, like, I'll get to the other stuff after that with, like, the other bigger problems I have. But, another digression before I kind of dive back into that. Oda's almost kind of slapping us in the face with this, where, you know, he's saying that, you know, with Shirahoshi being Poseidon, and Neptune saying, you know, every power depends on how you use it. Again, another theory I've held for the longest time. I think this was the only interesting aspect of the chapter I really liked, was because I have a long held theory that the ancient weapons weren't really used as weapons in the past. So, you know, having Neptune kind of go, "Yeah, you know, every power depends on how you use it," and having Roger and the others be like, "Oh, you know, we just want to find out more about what it was," is kind of making me even more assured that that's the direction kind of Oda's going. But next part, Toki. Toki could have had the potential to be such a vastly interesting and complex and nuanced character, where it's like, all right, she ran away from her home 800 years in the past. You know, the assumption being that she's constantly time jumping to get to this point. She's obviously got a lot of history and a lot of significance to the overreaching plot of like Wano and everything else. And she basically got reduced to a baby making machine for Odin. And she just becomes kind of this prop that they're kind of just lugging around until, you know, she becomes convenient. and has to do things like saying, "Oh no, Odin, if you don't go on an adventure, I'm going to divorce you." It feels so forced for Toki to be like, "Oh, I'm going to make sure that you don't go back to Wano right now, Odin, because, there's plot stuff happening and I can't have you back here yet, man. It's got to get even worse." Like, it's really very heavy-handed of Odin. I feel like he could have handled this a lot better. And her having the line of, you're the type of man who stops now, like, we don't know enough about her as a character to say that that's a justified reaction she would have had. And so it really reads like a plot device to keep Odin away from Wano. And you have Odin himself, even kind of seemingly being frustrated about the idea of, I can't step foot on Wano because if I see the plight of my people, I will have no choice but to stay back and kind of, deal with whatever the situation was. And this ties into a lot of problems, not only in the flashback kind of reactions the Wano citizens themselves have had to Odin. And I'll kind of mitigate this by saying, yes, we don't know the full story yet, so maybe some of these complaints are unwarranted. But Odin's entire shtick from the moment he was introduced was, I want to go out to sea. I have no interest in being shogun, so you can all fuck off. I wanted to go do my own thing. I don't really care about anyone else or everyone else. And to now have this moment where he's kind of becoming, reflective and contemplative, or even in the moment a couple of chapters back when Oda had him being like writing his notes and saying, "Oh, will this journey finally give me the answer to the question I've been seeking?" Oda can't really go, "Hey, this guy's looking for the answer to this question," and then kind of just vaguely hand wave away what the question is and what answer Odin's looking for. And this ties into my problem with this, where he's just kind of being like, "Oh, I wish I could go back, but I have a mission." Because we don't really know what the hell Odin's mission is, or what his dream is, or what his goal is, apart from, I want to go out to sea and I want to open the borders of Wano, which is so nebulous and abstract that it doesn't really cement any concrete ideas of what he wants to achieve. And that's why this moment really falls flat, where, it feels like he's supposedly making a tough decision to have to choose to abandon, his wife and everything else, everyone else that he loves, to kind of go on this mission. Because we don't know what the mission is. And Oda spent such little time developing the bond between these characters that all these moments are supposed to have an emotional impact really don't. Because as far as we can tell, we don't really know why Odin cares about the Scabbards or why the Scabbards care about Odin. I kind of touched on this in multiple previous videos about how Oda could have done this. And even with the argument of, Oda's trying to rush it, he has to pick and choose, what to kind of showcase and everything. I feel like, important things like this, like the bonds between the characters, which has always been a core aspect of One Piece, neglecting that really is just poor storytelling, even if it is in the service of Oda being like, "Oh, I have to rush this for reasons, for whatever." And that's kind of ignoring the idea also, or the assumption that, Oda couldn't have written this flashback or done it better. And I don't think that's necessarily true either, which kind of ties back to my whole thing with nostalgia, where it seems like Oda is, trying to kind of take the lazy shortcut of building that emotional investment. And now we're starting to see, where it's starting to fall flat in all of this. And I have questions about the fact that Odin was supposedly able to go and get a rubbing of the poneglyph and just had blinders on, so he didn't see anything of what was happening in Wano, or didn't hear any of the news about Orochi and able to get back to the ship without kind of noticing any of this. And maybe the thing is, we'll get to this eventually. We'll find out when he gets back, blah, 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 whatever. It still is not great storytelling. And I was going to say something else. I quickly forgot about this. I'll try to get back to that once if I remember when I get to this. No. Shit, what the hell was it? Yeah. Never mind. If I remember it, I will try to get back to when I get to the end. And then, again, with the Buggy Shanks thing, that seems like Shanks, Buggy becoming sick, Shanks becoming thing behind, seems like a convenient cop-out again to have him be like, oh, now they have plausible deniability about knowing what the One Piece was, so they could never have spoiled it or the mystery. Again, there might be a reason he's done it, but as of now, it really is just heavy-handed, kind of hand-waving away a lot of questions I think readers have had up to this point. And then we get to, I suppose, what we'll call the climax. Oh, I remembered what the other point was. I'll get to it after I finish this. Which is apparently whatever the treasure was. I think, spoilers for anyone that hasn't watched One Piece Stampede, is not a major thing, but in that the movie confirms that the romanization for Raftel, as we've noted thus far, is actually Laugh-Tail. And this is the first kind of major hint we've gotten of what the One Piece is. And Roger, of course, his reaction is to laugh. There's a whole bunch of speculation about what that means. I'm not really particularly invested in it because I just kind of want to talk about my personal feelings on it. I think I've gotten to the point anyway where I don't really care what the One Piece turns out to be. Because I know it's kind of a laughable comment at this point to kind of go, it's all about the journey, not the destination, etc., etc. But to me, that's always what the series has been about. I kind of think Luffy exemplified this back in Sabaody, where he said, knowing where we're going is not any fun. And I don't want to go on a boring adventure where kind of stuff is mapped out for you, and you kind of are anticipating whatever the end treasure is. You kind of have to go on the journey for the sake of adventure, not because you're looking at getting some kind of material reward. So I feel like that ties into a lot of my feelings on why I don't really care about what it is. But on the other hand, I also feel like it's impossible not to care about what the treasure is because it is going to impact kind of a lot of the end of series, revelations, and plot points that come along. And I think my biggest concern with how Oda's setting it up and constantly hyping it and hiding it and doing things like the Roger just laughed is he's building up fan expectations and our imaginations of what this treasure is going to be. And even if we claim, that I don't really care what it is, no matter what it is, I'll be fine, I trust Oda, blah, blah, blah. It feels like at a certain point, it's safe to say, not everyone is going to be content with whatever the treasure is when Oda ultimately reveals it. But I feel like, hyping it up to this extent kind of makes readers anticipate a bigger payoff coming down the line. And so, it's like the bigger the expectation, the bigger the payoff. Also, the bigger the potential disappointment if it doesn't play out the way Oda's kind of imagined it. And so that's always been a concern of mine with, finding out what the One Piece will be eventually. And the reason it kind of ties into my whole thing with the comment with the journey, not the destination, is I don't want to think that, finding out what the One Piece is and finding out there's not satisfactory will ruin the journey thus far. But it kind of potentially could. Like, I'll have to probably do a more cohesive video on that at some point, where I address, because kind of right now I'm just spitballing and I'm not really being as succinct as I would like. But I don't know. Oh, forgot to mention it. I think the other reason, because I had time to think about this, because I saw this panel and the spoilers for 2 weeks, so I've had kind of time to process it a little bit. And I think the other reason this reveal is so tonally jarring for me as well is I know a lot of people see it and they're like, oh, it makes so much sense, with Binks Sasaki and the ending of the song calling it Laugh Tale, and the D's being people that died even when they're laugh when they're died, blah blah blah. But back in Sabaody, when Raleigh was talking about the Roger Pirates and their brush with this history and talking about what they felt and everything else, and he tells Robin, maybe we and the scholars of O'Hara were too hasty, and maybe you'll come to a different interpretation or conclusion than we did when you finally reach the last island. And that had such a somber kind of tone. And I think that kind of colored ideas on what to expect the treasure to be. And I think when I first saw this, my reaction was kind of divided between wondering, is Roger laughing because of what the treasure is, and he's kind of can't believe that, I made this journey all this way and this is what, the ancient kingdom, whatever, considered a treasure? Or, is he laughing because of the entire tale of what happened during the Void Century and what the weapons are and like how everything ties together? And again, that tonal shift between that and kind of Raleigh's somber kind of recollection of what it was. So it feels very tonally jarring, which I think is at least some of the reason also why this reveal didn't hit or land with me as well as it did with some other people. But I'll try to put together more cohesive thoughts about it, I suppose, and try to get together something a little bit more succinct. Maybe in a couple of months again, because I just did One Piece stream with some good friends. So maybe once Wano is over and we've got answers to some more of these bigger mysteries, I might set up another discussion to kind of talk about this, because it is a monumental chapter despite my misgivings with it. But so it'd be interesting to kind of see what the general fandom vibe is kind of. But yeah, I think I've prattled on long enough about that. The final closing comment I also wanted to make was related to the Odin stuff from earlier. And this was something that really bugged me back in the Prisoner Udon mines when, what was it, Hyogoro reveals that Momonosuke is Odin's son and the Kozuki clan are back. And all the samurai kind of just bowed to him and they're like, oh my god, we've been waiting your return for so long, blah blah blah. And to me that also felt very heavy-handed, because as we see in this chapter, Odin abandoned his vassals and his country at a time when they really needed him the most to go off adventuring. And it feels like we've never... And not only did he do that, he did it without any explanation for them, about why he's doing what he's doing, what he's going to search for, any kind of explanation like that. And the fact that they still faced their full trust and faith in him, being like, oh no, he has his reasons, he is a good person, he's doing this for he's doing this for the people of Wano. It feels too fake. And again, same with the Kozukis, where it's like, all right, the Kozuki clan abandoned us for 20 years to suffer under Orochi's rule, where the rich are living in excess and the rest of us are living in crushing poverty. And then to have them come back 20 years later and be like, well, we need your help. and for everyone to kind of just fall at their feet and be like, oh yes, we knew you saviors would come back and rescue us, yes. It feels really fake that none of these people would have had a grudge or resentment towards Odin for being like, hey, you abandoned your country when we needed you the most. You constantly talked about how you didn't want to be a leader and you weren't a good leader at all. You know, after that, your retainers disappeared for 20 years and we've been waiting for you to come back and everything. It just, and this could easily be hand waved away by saying, well, we don't know the full story. The flashback's not done yet. We don't know what Odin's, going to come back and do and like blah, blah, blah. But this ties into all my previous comments about Oda hasn't laid enough of the groundwork. And yet he's already trying to, push us along the tracks and pretend like, it's a paved road towards the finale and we just have to wait till we crest the rise and see the bigger picture. And I can't really buy that anymore, that he has some kind of larger vision or some kind of, payoff coming. And that's especially not how critical thinking works. The idea that you just have to have blind faith is not something I can do anymore. And I'd love to be proven wrong and be like, oh, Oda had a rocky start to Wano, but he's going to wrap things up beautifully at the end. And, the tapestry will reveal itself and will showcase, this beautiful picture that he's built. And I wish I could buy and believe that, but really at this point, seeing is believing, and Oda's really not doing a good job of making me believe from what I can see so far. So, honestly, if you all enjoyed this chapter, good on you. I mean, the ending's definitely brought up some intriguing ideas, but Oda needs to do better. I know he can do better, so here's hoping he'll deliver. I think Jump is on break for the next few chapters, so so don't expect any more reaction videos for a while. After this chapter, I will try to go back to my former idea of trying to do maybe 4 chapters at once or in a row or something like that. But I'll kind of keep my ears to the ground and see what the fandom reaction discussion around certain chapters is, and I might bump in earlier or later then, depending on if I have thoughts or something else to share. If you have opinions on that, if you'd like me to wait, 3-4 chapters and then just do a huge review all at once, coupled together, if you think it'll flow better, or if you'd like me to go back to doing weekly reaction videos as well, let me know. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed my thoughts. And if you have any discussion points or counterpoints to anything I've said, drop a comment below. Other than that, if you liked the video, please do like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, this is Ash. Talk to you later.